Hello and welcome. This is James from the DSO Imager channel. Tonight I'm going to show the processing workflow that I used on my latest target here. This is NGC 6820 and I guess technically NGC 6823. So NGC 6823 is the star cluster and 6820 is the nebula. Now, before I get started, I just want to mention I've had a lot of new subscribers recently, and I wanted to explain what these workflow videos are in case anyone that's watching this hasn't seen them before. Basically, I use workflow videos to show how I process the image. I show little techniques here and there, but it's mostly about my approach to processing and what I'm thinking about and why I'm doing certain things. These videos are not tutorials, so if you feel like I'm moving ahead too quickly or I'm not showing exactly how to do it, that's why. Now, I do have a handful of tutorial videos on PixInsight on my website, on my YouTube channel, and I need to do some updates on them, especially the beginner PixInsight one because I was leveraging a tool that's no longer available. Now, even if you're not very familiar with how to use the different tools in PixInsight, I think these workflow videos are still good because it's still going to give you some exposure on how someone like myself will process these images. So stay tuned for tutorials in the near future and enjoy this workflow. Now for this shot I used a 115mm refractor. It's my AT115 EDT. I am using the 0.8 reducer with it. The camera is a ZWO ASI 1600 mono, and the filters that I'm using are Astrodon narrowband filters, S2, HA, and O3, and they're all 5 nanometer. Total integration time is a hair under 53 hours. It's like 2 subs short of 53 hours. The breakdown is S2 125 10-minute subs, HA 104 subs, and O3 88 subs. And my strategy in collecting the data was based on the moon cycle. So the weather had cleared up and we were going to get another long string of clear nights. But it opened up for us a little bit before the full moon. So it was like 80% moon. I don't remember exactly, but the moon was already pretty bright. And so I just parked the scope on there running S2. And this is the reason why I have so many more S2 frames than anything else. And so I kept S2 on there until the moon got below 80%. And then I started grabbing HA. And then without the moon, I got some O3. Now the thing is, the moon would rise an hour or two after sunset, and each night it rised a little bit later. So for that first hour or 2 hours, I would actually go and grab an hour's worth of O3 before switching to S2. And then once the moon got down to an 80% and it was rising 3 or 4 hours after sunset, I would run O3 and then switch to HA and finish off with HA while that moon was out. Now the reason I do that is that S2 is furthest to the red. It's more red than HA is, the S2 light. So it's being scattered less by the atmosphere, and it seems to be, of the three, least impacted by the moon's light. The other thing is that the S2 signal really isn't as critical in most narrowband images. HA is where the majority of your detail, especially on a target like this. The S2 is there, but it's not very strong. So I felt like S2's ability to handle the moon better than the other two filters, along with the fact that the S2 data is not quite as critical, along with the fact that I got more subs than anything else on S2, I figured it could handle the moon. Alright, so what you see here is the HA, the stacked HA image. I did use drizzle. This is unstretched, and just to kind of give a good look. I do have a little bit of tilt in my system that I need to deal with. I've been putting that off. You know, really with a full moon out, that's the time to to work on things, but I didn't do it. All right, and let's take a look at that S2 data. Here we go. So, I mean, now notice, I had the, like I said, I had the moon out there, 100% moon, full moon, and up to 80%, and I don't really see too much of a gradient here. So I think this target was just far enough away from the moon, and the fact that it's just getting S2 light, that it handled it pretty well. So now I'm sure this would look better, more contrasty if this data was captured without the moon out, but I think for this image it's going to be good enough. And here's the O3. Oops, that is O3 without stars. So actually, let me. I had some problems with the O3, and we'll go over that right now. So I'm using really old flats. We had so many clear nights that I didn't want to take my rigs apart and bring the scopes in to take flats. And the reason why I would have to take the flats inside is because outside, when it's not dark, it's too hot for me to run the cameras, power the rigs and everything. So the only way I'd be able to get flats would be to consume some of the dark sky with and go out there with a tablet and grab some flats, which I didn't want to do that. So I've just been using these flats that date back to March, I think. There aren't any spots on the lenses or the camera that are providing problems. Refractors tend to be pretty good about that, but there was an issue where I believe the filter wheel and the filter's location was cut, and so this area here was very dark. So some vignetting here and some vignetting here. These corners here seem to be unaffected. I don't know, maybe that's the result of the tilt that I have. So anyway, the way I corrected that was while still linear, because this is a linear image, while still linear, I removed the stars, and then I used clone stamp to clean up these corners, and then I added the stars back in. So that's what this O3_B is. So this is the cleaned up image with the stars attached, but we can go back and you'll see the work that I did. See how we got that corner coming back here? And there. See, so you can see where I used clone stamp. And there. So this is what the original stack was, and I just pulled the stars off to use clone stamp to take out those corners and put the stars back. And this is the one that I used to do the combination with. All right, and so I use the regular LRGB combination tool, standard Hubble palette, so S2 red, HA green, O3 blue, and hit that button to combine them, and the output was this here. Alright, so after this I did a little bit of a crop right there. Notice I got a little preview box here. So what I'm doing here is I'm using this as a reference point for background neutralization. So while I did not do any color calibration, I did still want to do a background neutralization, and that's what the result is. Now this looks kind of crazy, right? Don't worry about that. Just you can do another unlinked auto stretch, and here it is. All right, now notice I did not run dynamic background extraction. So this area is full. There really isn't a lot of background. I did experiment when I was about midway through collecting the data, and I didn't like what the background what background extraction, dynamic background extraction was doing. It was creating too much of a harsh contrast. So you know what? This image didn't really need it, even with the moon out. I wasn't getting any kind of gradient here. All right, so next was blur exterminator. Let's see if that's it. Yep, there it is. So blur exterminator doing its magic as usual. Right? I mean, it really does a fantastic job with these stars. All right, and these stars are still linear. So, I mean, this is my star reduction right here. And the details in the nebula look pretty good too. I mean, so the focal length that I'm running at is 644 millimeters, I think. So we're still in wide field territory, I think, but we're getting decent detail. All right, so I got to this point. I used Star Exterminator to remove the stars. You can see the stars right here, still linear. And then with the stars out of the picture, I just used the auto stretch, unlinked auto stretch, and applied that to the image. And then after that, I had used SC&R tool to remove some of the green, not all of it. I want to say it was about, you know what, I don't think it's going to be in here. Yeah. It was probably about 40 to 50% of the green that I removed. And what I ended up with after doing that was this here. Now, I had actually taken this into Photoshop as well, and I tweaked it a little bit using the Camera Raw filter. I've been using that a lot lately. It's the sliders in that Camera Raw filter are really easy. What it does is it does a really good job of controlling how much brightness. Like, it's just easier than using curves. I used to run curves manually, but I can get it done a lot quicker and seemingly better using the sliders in Photoshop. And I'll just show you get a sneak peek at what the image looked like here. But let me go into there. Right, so it's these sliders. So for example, if you want this area to be darker, you can pull back on the blacks. Or if you want it brighter, you can pull up here. Dehaze and clarity do some really interesting things. The thing is, though, you got to be careful. I mean, you know, you can do this, and you see pictures like this being shared on social media that look exactly like this. And that's what's happening is they're hitting dehaze and clarity and other contrast controls too much. But you know, I mean, this is all a personal taste thing, right? To my eye, this looks overcooked. So and I've overcooked this image while processing, not realizing what was going on. You tend to get like tunnel vision. And before you know it, you've butchered your image without even realizing it. So do we want to cancel all changes? Yep, because we definitely did not like that. Alright, so after some initial work in Photoshop, I ended up here. Let's see. I'm getting ahead of myself. So you can see I brought it back from Photoshop and I started doing some work with curves, focusing in this area, and my goal here is to turn this yellow into more of an orange reddish color, and to turn these yellows here that are surrounding this area into more of a goldish color. And I want to dial back the green, not too much. I like the green in my images, but I don't want the green to be that strong. And here, let me show the mask that I'm using, right? So clearly I'm working in this interior. And I'm just using curves to control the colors. So it's mostly working on the green. So if I pull it up. Alright, so I can pull back green, or I can add green. I mean, the thing is, with the right masks, if you're removing green and suddenly your image is getting too purple, then you can mask the area off and increase green to get it back. And I actually had to do that while processing this. All right, I'm not going to go through all of it because I mean from here on out it's mostly working with curves and doing different tweaks. Um, the stars, let's take a look at those really quick. So this is what I ended up with. So a mild stretch, I use the SCNR tool to remove green. I did the old trick where you invert and subtract green to get rid of the magenta stars that are so common in Hubble palette pictures. And put them all together, and I think this was the first combined image with the stars back. And I thought this looked pretty good. But I had some issues with it. The biggest issues I had with this, what do you think? Look at this for a moment. Do you see any anomalies standing out? It's funny because my eyes drew to it right away. So the halo here and the halo here. I did not like these halos, right? So the halos are a couple of things. Part of it is because these stars are very small, right? I didn't stretch them all the way. If we look at the same area, right? I mean, the halo is not as noticeable because the star is pretty big here. So when you reduce the star, I mean, it's not even really a halo. This little halo, this thing is the halo. I'm not really worried about that, to be honest. It's this effect around the star, and it's also, you know, it's an ASI 1600. You can see the hints of the micro lensing effect that sensor has. And same kind of deal here. So it's really this purplish blue hazy spot that I'm not too crazy about. Alright, so how did I take care of these? Well, it was pretty easy. I went back to the starless image. I created a couple masks using the game script. So there's one mask over there, and there's the other one over there. And with this mask applied to the starless image, it was just a matter of pulling back on the curves. And then recombined again, and look, those halos are gone. Right, I mean, you can see a little bit of it still, especially here. But look, you gotta zoom in all the way to see it. So I think this handled it pretty well. All right, so let me kill this preview here. Basically, this is where I got when I shared the picture out on YouTube's community page or community section. And so if you're not familiar with that, not everyone in YouTube uses them, but I use it. And what I do is I tend to post the first pass shot. So I finished processing this, I threw it out there, but then I took a pause. I usually give myself about 24 hours or so before I push an image out there, because I'll come back and see little things that are wrong with it that I'll want to tweak. And sure enough, I did want to do some tweaks. So let me pull up the next iteration and see if you guys can see the difference. It should be pretty clear here. Yeah, so the biggest difference here is like this kind of purplish haze overcast that I have on the whole image here. So I wanted to get rid of that. And how I tackled that was with a combination of more curves work and also going back into Photoshop and utilizing the here, I'll just show you real quick. Yeah, adjustments, hue, saturation. And so what this does is it allows you to manually change the tint on the colors. Now, PixInsight has this ability. You can do this in PixInsight, but I just find it easier to, I mean, look how easy that is, right? So that's what I did, and I addressed all the colors a little bit, and I tackled the kind of purplish magenta color. Notice this area up here is, you know, how did I get rid of the purple here? Well, so I mentioned it earlier in the video. Purple is the inverse of green. So I could have tackled this by maybe pulling blue back on curves, and that would have given it a more reddish and greenish appearance. But also by pulling back on curves, I'm also darkening the area. So I actually did a combination. I pulled back on blue a little bit, but I increased green a little bit. I used a mask, a color mask. Like even this area here, you can see some magenta, but it's purple here. So I decided to keep the hints of magenta in there. And just want to kind of get rid of the purple. And of course I tweaked the colors here. I increased saturation and vibrance a little bit. Maybe I overdid it. Perhaps this image on the right's overcooked a little bit. And then I was going to go with this, and as I'm looking at it, I felt the contrast was too much. This area and this corner down here were too dark, so I tweaked it ever so slightly. And here you can see, let's move this over. Yeah, so it's just a little bit lighter. I mean, it's still pretty contrasty. This is the point where one is at risk of dropping down the rabbit hole of endless tweaks. I do feel like I maybe overcooked it a little bit, but I'm going with this for now. So this is the final image. Alright, so I would really appreciate if you gave this video a thumbs up or a thumbs down. Either one works. If you're not already subscribed, hit that subscribe button. That way you can stay on top of my videos. And then drop some comments down there and let me know what you think of the colors I used on this and whether or not this is overcooked. Oh, before I forget, this target doesn't really have a name from what I could find. I looked and there was no name out there. And I suspect this would be a more popular target if it had a name. So, at least for now, I'm just going to call this the Harvester Nebula. And why the Harvester Nebula? Well, this structure here looks like the bad guy aliens in the Independence Day movies. And they're called harvesters or something like that. So that's what I see, and I'm calling this the Harvester Nebula. All right, with that, I'll say good evening and clear skies.